All right, I'd like to call this Monday, November 7th, Board of County Commissioners meeting to order. And Commissioner Helms, if you would please lead us in the invocation.
We bow, please. Dear Heavenly Father, you are indeed the giver of all gifts, and we welcome today to seek your wisdom and guidance. On this day before our country's election, we ask that you place your hand on our hearts so that we will do your will. Give us the wisdom to place our vote on candidates that would bless you and guide our country. Give us insight to lead with integrity, that our decisions may reflect what is right and good. Please give special protection to the military, police, EMS, and firemen that risk their lives to ensure our safety. Finally, dear Lord, grant us the humility to always seek you, your will, in all that we do and say. In thy name we pray. Amen.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, next we have informal comments, and I'm not showing anybody signed up to speak for the informal comments. We'll go to additions, deletions, and our adoption of the agenda. And I did have a request to get the school system on early. I see they're under old business. Is that right?
It's under old business, yes,
So
sir.
they'll be moved up. Okay, I got you. All right. Any other additions or deletions from the
Motion
agenda?
to approve the agenda.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Next, we have the consent agenda.
Motion to approve consent.
Motion's been made. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. All right. That brings us to old business, and I believe we have Union County Public Schools on the first item.
Yes, sir. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have received this request from Union County Public Schools, and there are a couple of different pieces to this, so I will go over it, and I know that there are representatives here from the school board who are available to answer any of the board's questions. We received a request from them on funding flexibility for a couple of different projects. When we budgeted their capital budget, we did it by specific categories. For example, on the Juniper upgrade in the IT area, it was actually budgeted in the county's budget by schools. So the situation that they ran into is there are 4 schools that the bids came in over what was available in the budget, and there's 1 school that came under what they had in the budget. So what they have requested in that particular situation is $10,454.10 be transferred from the Indian Trail Juniper upgrade to, and I don't know that I have them here, I think it was Hemby Bridge, and in the background there are the balance of the projects. Hemby Bridge Elementary, Indian Trail Elementary, Monroe Middle, and Piedmont Middle. Then the second component of their request is they had 2 chillers that needed to have an emergency replacement, totaling $115,800, and so they are requesting that money be transferred from the warehouse roofing project to cover the need for those 2 chillers. This does not change the bottom line of their capital budget. It is just moving monies around from capital components of the budget that the board has adopted.
Any discussion or questions? I know we have some representatives from the school board here today. Anybody like to make a motion?
Motion to amend the 2016 capital budget for UCPS by transferring the following, as outlined by the county manager, from the Juniper projects, $10,454 from Indian Trail, $2660,135 from Hemby Bridge, $4737.75 from Monroe Middle, and $822.77 from Piedmont Middle. And Wesley Chapel Elementary, the amount of $2231.21, and $115,800 from warehouse re-roofing to Sun Valley High School chiller replacement in the amount of $53,100, and Piedmont Middle School chiller replacement in the amount of $62,700, and approve the applicable capital project ordinance.
Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? No. Thank you, down to 2. All right, next we have new business. We have presentation of the comprehensive annual financial report for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2016.
Yes, Chairman, I'd like to recognize Debbie Cox, our comptroller, who will introduce our auditor, who will present you an overview of our annual audit.
Good evening.
Hello.
I'm so excited to be standing here to tell you that our FY 2016 audit is complete. And I would like to introduce Daniel Dougherty. He is the manager of Cherry Becker, who actually performed our audit. And he's going to give you a review of the audit. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I just want to first just thank everyone for giving us the opportunity to provide this to you tonight, and also to Jeff, Debbie, and Beverly, and all the staff at Finance for all the work they did in this audit. The audit began back in May. It's a culmination of about 6 months of work that we did, starting out with the planning process of our audit, all the way through field work where we tested all the balances and made sure that the CAFR was fairly stated. And so we just thank everyone for their hard work in getting this completed. Today, I'm just going to go over 4 key areas with you over the audit. First is the client service team that served you this year, the role of the external auditor in an audit, key highlights, and accounting standards that will be new to you in the coming years. So first off, the client service team did not change from the prior year. We had the same team in place that we had last year. Eddie Burke, the engagement partner, was not able to make it tonight, obviously, so but he was the same engagement partner that was on last year, myself, and then Tim Fanner and Alex Porter were the staff on the engagement. In terms of our role as an external auditor, it starts with the planning process. Again, like I said, we started back in May. It starts with the risk assessment and understanding you as an entity and making sure that we have the right risks in place and understanding of you so that we can audit you properly. And what we do then is we perform the audit. We start out with our test of internal controls, make sure that in your significant transaction cycles, which I'll go into in a little more detail a little later, I'll have correct controls in place so that the information that's being reported on the CAFR is correct. Then we work on our audit to express an opinion, and then at the end of our audit, we do this, as we're doing tonight, is to express our independence to you and speak to you about any changes and all for the audit. In terms of our key highlights for the financial statements, we issued an unmodified opinion. That's the highest level of opinion that we can give you. We performed our audit in accordance with generally accepted auditing principles and governmental auditing standards. And in accordance with government auditing standards, we also issued our report on internal control and compliance. And again, we issued an unmodified opinion in that respect as well. In terms of federal and state single audit findings, we issued an unmodified opinion again in both of those cases. Internal controls, we had no findings this year. We had one finding last year, and that was properly cleared, and there was no additional findings found in the current year. For single audit, we had multiple findings in the prior year. This year, we only had one. This one finding related to a program we had not tested in the prior year. It was Women, Infant, and Children, the WIC program. and it had to do with internal controls over eligibility determinations and making sure that they had proper controls in place to review those eligibility determinations to make sure no overpayments were being made. In our audit, we found no instances of overpayments being made, but we just had those recommendations in terms of internal controls so that in the future we can ensure that there would be no overpayments, continue to be no overpayments. In terms of our SAS 114 letter, that's our required communications to you, the board, and in that communications we've gone over that there is no audit adjustment entries during this audit. We had 2 past adjustment journal entries, which is listed. If you have in front of you, this is the SAS 114 letter. It starts out at the top and then it goes significant audit findings. This is that letter, and in there it talks about the 2 past adjustment entries that management had assessed that they were not material to financial statements, and we agreed with their assessment, and so we did not post them in the current year.
The materials that Dan is referring to are in the CAFR that you're provided in your financial statements. In the book, they should have been at each of your seats. I believe they're in the compliance section. Last tab.
In terms of new standards that have been implemented that have also been disclosed in that letter, GASB 68 was implemented this year. You'll remember last year we implemented GASB 68 with the North Carolina Local Governmental Employees Register, and then with the Register of Deeds as well. But this year you guys had placed in an irrevocable trust back in June your separation allowance, and because of that, that created GASB 68 to be implemented this year as well. If you had not done that, GASB 73 would be in place, and you wouldn't have shown a liability on your books this year for the full amount of the separation allowance. But since it was placed in a trust, you were able to show the whole liability, which the whole liability was $13.5 million. 11.9 million was governmental, and the rest was business type activities, employees. GASB 72 was not very complex. It just had a couple of new disclosures regarding your types of investments and if they're level 1, 2, or 3. All your investments are level 1, and most governments have only level 1 investments. They don't have level 2 or 3, but it's just a required disclosure in the current year. And these are mostly debt securities that beat the level 1 criteria because they're observable inputs, because they're on the market and can be verified. And then lastly, we had 2 management letter comments. They related to the testing of Medicaid and CHIPS. These comments did not result in a finding on the audit financial statements or a finding to our single audit testing, because they didn't reach that level, but there was some certain documentation regarding eligibilities that was missing in some files. Those were still determined to be eligible, so there was no issue to be reported on the financial statements, but again, we wanted to put it in the manager letter because we thought it was important to address with those in charge of governance to ensure that you guys are understanding what's going on there. Before I talked about significant transaction cycles, the significant transaction cycles that we identified here are all listed here underneath this, and what most of these are identified as significant transaction cycles is because there are either inherently more risky areas where significant risk occurs, or they're also just high volume transaction, and as a county your payroll, cash receipts, and disbursements are definitely high value, high volume transactions that we need to make sure we have a good control and make sure we understand when we're reporting on the CAFR. In terms of test of internal controls, we tested payroll this year and we found no instances of any issues. In terms of our adjusting journal entry testing, we're required to test journal entries posted throughout the year, manual entries, and we use our program Active Data, which basically takes the whole population of journal entries and is able to siphon through and identify riskier entries, which we can use certain parameters to fix. And so those parameters usually are weekend entries, entries near year end, and then entries that have round numbers, things that we can isolate as more the things that would be more risky. And lastly, we had IT controls. Each year we have our IT specialists review your IT controls. IT controls are very important at the county, given especially with the HIPAA regulations. and the amount of personal identifiable information that you guys, health information that you guys carry with your Department of Social Services and other departments. And with that testing, we found no issues this year to report as well. In terms of significant audit areas, I have listed here are the assets, your cash and investments, accounts receivable, revenue, and capital assets are the more important areas. They are where your assets, your liabilities, accounts payable, expenses, accrued expenses, payroll, self-insurance, landfill, derivatives, which you've removed 2 of your derivatives this year, so you only have 1 derivative remaining. Your long-term debt and net position. Other areas include related parties, which we check to see if there's any related parties that need to be disclosed, and we noted none this year. Estimates are also in that letter I had referenced earlier. We document to you any significant estimates, which we determined that are depreciable assets, allowance for doubtful accounts, the actuary reports related to your North Carolina local government employee pension plan, and registered D pension plan, and separation allowance were all, and also claims paid on your self-insurance are all significant estimates that we were required to communicate to you. In terms of our single audit, the programs that we tested were medical assistance, NC Health Choice, and WIC for federal programs. For state programs, cross-cutting is required to be tested each year when you test the social services type programs like medical assistance and CHIPS. And so we tested that as well. And medical assistance does run from federal and state funding, so we tested both in that instance. In terms of new standards that are applicable in the coming years, GABC 73 again relates to pension plans that are in trust, that are not in trust, and you don't have any now that you put that separation allowance in a trust, so this will not be applicable to you any further. GABC 74 relates to OPEB. It has to do with those that don't have it in trust moving it into the general fund, which you don't have an issue with because you do have it in a trust. And it also has to do with some additional disclosures that you'll see next year. 75 is 2 years away. This has to do with OPEB again, and this has to do with putting the actual liability on your books. Currently, for the OPEB, you have, you have $54 million, of which you have $54 million liability related to OPEB, of which you've funded 37%, or $20 million, as of this year, which leaves a $34 million liability that will be reported in the coming years if not fully funded. I will say, though, that in other counties and cities, there are much larger amounts out there, so I would just say that you guys have been taking steps appropriate to help fund this, but this is something that will come onto your books in the next 2 years. GABC 76 doesn't have too much applicability to you. It has to do with the hierarchy of the standards, and it moves up the implementation guides higher in the standards, so that you can use those implementation guides and know that they are authoritative. And GABC 77 has to do with tax abatements that are not given to the general public. They have to do with ones that are given specifically to in an agreement for a return of some kind of service, whether it be bringing employees to the county or such. And I don't think, as far as I know, for this year, you had nothing that would need to be reported there, but this is something to look for in the future if ever it became. So in summary, we gave clean opinion. We had no adjusting journal entries, 2 past adjustment journal entries, no financial statement findings, and only 1 single audit finding, 2 management letter comments, and full cooperation from management. So I'll leave you guys with if you have any questions or comments.
Any questions? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Need a motion make the motion to accept the comprehensive annual financial report for the year ending June 30th, 2016. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None. All right, next we have the Nursing Home Advisory Committee appointment.
Ms. Carolyn Goodwin has submitted her application for that committee. And she also spoke with Laura, is it Abinator of Central Iowa Council of Governments. And so the action requested is to consider that appointment.
Make a motion to appointment of Carolyn Goodwin to the Nursing Home Advisory Committee.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None. Next, we have 18, Home and Community Care Block Grant Advisory Committee appointment.
Motion to appoint Don Moldovan
Okay,
on the Home and Community Care Block Grant Advisory Committee.
any discussion? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None. That brings us to county manager's comments.
And I have no comments this evening.
And Commissioner Jerry Simpson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just wanted to thank Ms. Pam Gillard, who's a teacher over at Western Union Elementary School. It's been a week or so ago that I got the opportunity to go, along with some other elected officials, and speak to the third graders with regard to government, county government, and I was bombarded with questions. They had really done the job of teaching them what to ask, and really some pointed questions. But what was exciting to me was you don't hear a lot about civic education in schools anymore. And those kids obviously had some good sessions talking about our government and how it works. In fact, I think today they may have had an election and actually picked the third grade president today. So I'm not sure who that was, but I congratulate them on their win. Tomorrow certainly is a very important day in our country, and if you have not already done so, I encourage you. Of course, you won't see this till after it's over, but I always encourage you to exercise your right to vote. Thank you very much.
Mr. Richard Helms.
Yeah, for the past 17 days, I've been spending at the polls, and I've had the pleasure of meeting hundreds of veterans. Friday's Veterans Day. I ask that you support your veterans and thank them when you have the opportunity. And then following on Saturday is beginning of Warriors and Warbirds. It's one of the premier air shows on the East Coast, and we'll have the opportunity to recognize veterans there. So I'm excited about that. And I'd like to agree with Commissioner Simpson that please exercise your right to vote. We've had about 70,000 vote so far, which is historic, and anticipating quite a few tomorrow. So go out and exercise your right to vote. That'll be all. Thank you.
Commissioner Lance Simpson.
Echo previous comments. Just everyone keep in mind on Veterans Day, appreciate those who have served and will serve in the future. And again, if you have not already voted, it's going to be a beautiful day. Make sure you exercise that right and get out and vote.
Vice Chairman Frank Akins.
I'll just echo everything that's been said. Thank your veterans, and make sure you go vote, and let's make America great again.
And I will leave it with you guys. Y'all said it perfectly. So with that, motion to adjourn. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None.